Good evening, good evening, good evening. In a week when transfer shenanigans are happening, when the women's Euros, it's the Euros, isn't it? Goes to a 28 penalty shootout or something like that. Who brings you the accurate news from all of soccer and then tells it at the end that we were just making it all up as we went along? It's us, the American Scouser TV Thursday Night Podcast. That's the Tinnipa to the cool kids, joined by Brian, Suzie, and Kenny. Brian and Suzie are mute, just in case they haven't remembered. But boys, how are we?
Doing good.
Good. Yeah,
it's a boiling hot week up here in the northeast. I'm sure it is everywhere else as well. And that's just the contents of my pants.
You just dealt with like 2 weeks worth of rain.
2 weeks worth of rain. I would happily have a bit of rain, except for rain is hot in this country and not freezing cold like it is back home, which is the best kind of rain as far as I'm concerned. But let's crack on, and this is what we're going to talk about tonight. The transfer work of Tricky Dicky Hughes. It's looking exciting, and it's looking like we have somebody who actually has some plans and tricks up his sleeve and isn't going to be getting into arguments with the manager. And interesting events afoot with the forward line. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about Luis Diaz. Transfer bids coming in, 28 years old. Are we going to hold out for a hero worth of money? Thanks, Bonnie Tyler. Or are we going to let him go on the cheap? Then we'll talk about another contract thing, Ibu Kanate. What are we going to do about him? Are we going to try and let him see out his contract, or are we going to replace him now, or are we going to try and pin him to the wall and then put I don't know. I'm gonna say probably Allison's rotten shoe to his face and force him to sign. And then we'll talk about Olivia Smith, a £1 million women's player from Liverpool to Arsenal. So not an addition for Liverpool Football Club, a subtraction, but nevertheless a monumental moment in the women's game. So let us start by saying hello to Tony in the studio and his 2 cans of Tango. And deluded Steve. Good evening to you as well, my friend. So, Misters Hugo and Isak. This was the big story all season, boys. We talked about the merits of Isak and the possibility of number 9 or no number 9 under Slot's next phase. Hugo Ekitike, I hope I've said that right because I'm very tired. But he has, it seems like there's an actual machine running to get that boy into Liverpool. It seems to me as well that we're playing Newcastle really, really well with this entire thing because they were in for him as well. So we'll start with Brian. What do you think of this? Is Richard Hughes playing an absolutely fantastic tactical 4D chess game, as Suzie hints at? Or, are we just being a little bit opportunistic? And which signing, we can make a comparison later, but which signing do you think would be the best one for Liverpool? What say you, Mr. Shelton?
Well, I mean, I've already made my opinion known about Isak right there for the past couple of weeks right there. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm in the same boat right there. I think it's actually a good plan right there.
Just for the benefit of viewers who haven't seen us for the last few weeks,
I do not want Isak. I think there's so many issues with muscle injuries and things they had with him, and I also think that it's not a signing that we need to have. But that's my opinion. I'm the one player I want. We're not going after. So I mean, I was on the Sesko train right there for it, but I don't think that's ever going to happen with us. But regardless, right there, I think that's a good plan right there that we've got. We basically came through and forced in Newcastle's hand. Okay, so you want to go in for Hugo Ekitike, I guess how you pronounce it. I'm like you. My pronunciation right there is kind of raw. Or Isak, or do you want to sell Isak? So, I mean, I think that forcing them to go through and make a decision right there basically came through and said, okay, cool, we're going to go with a younger version. And again, 22 versus 28. Again, I think that Hughes is definitely a numbers guy. And looking at the uptick of what his value could be through there, it makes all the sense right there for Liverpool to go after a younger player who has the same exact potential and ups right there. And Ekitike right there, I mean, being 22, up, and Isak at 28, he still has a good 2 years right there and there. I mean, unless he's like a Mo right there who can go a little bit longer. So you're going to mainly get 2 years. If you go with Hugo right there, you definitely have probably at least a 5 year. And then if it goes to that point, you have a good sell on value that you can probably go further on there. So yeah, I'm all for the Hugo Iteki fan.
Kenny, Matei says Isak is 25.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but
no. What I was going to say.
Sorry, then I'm wrong on that one. I'll take my wrongs.
Just don't listen to the Polish prince. He just wants his own little bit of fame because he's not on television with us tonight. Kenny, here's what I was going to say. There was like a couple of studies I read years and years ago that strikers, like proper number nines, their goal scoring peak is that 24 to 27 age range. After that, they tend to be consistent rather than dramatic. So you can see it in the likes like Alan Shearer and Robbie Fowler and Michael Owen. A lot of times injuries play a part in it, but they have like a 3 or 4 year peak. Isak may be in the middle of his peak if that statistic is true, whereas the beauty of Ekitike is that he is about to arrive at his. If we take that at face value, who do you think suits us better right now? Are we looking for the successor to Mo Salah, or are we looking for an addition to Mo Salah, perhaps with the ambition of winning the league again, or at least challenging very, very hard for it, and then maybe taking the Champions League as well? You'd want today's bread today in that case, wouldn't you?
Correct. I think that's a good way to put it. I think there's good arguments for both players. I think if we do want to win now, which it does seem like the slot is much more focused on the ready-made, not project player than, someone like Klopp was, then I think Isak is the best option to slot in and score goals for us immediately. He's more of a known quantity with being in the Premier League already. But as far as upside goes and longevity and potentially less injuries, there's certainly a higher upside maybe to the deal with Ekitike, but the floor is lower. Is I think like maybe a higher risk, which is why it costs less. Why it costs less money. So you get what you pay for. So I can see a good argument for both players. Personally, I want Isak. I wanted Isak the whole time. I think the muscular injuries were much more sparse last season. I think he got unlucky. Was it 3 years ago when he first came to Newcastle? The last 2 years, he scored 20 goals and not really missed that many games. It seems to be more of a. I mean, I'm no doctor or muscle injury expert, but it seems like he may have overcome that. Maybe getting used to the physicality of the league or whatever it may be. I think we could put him directly into the side, and he improves us the most of anyone we've been looking for at the striker position immediately. With that being said, I mentioned it in the Discord yesterday. If it's spend all of our money on Isak and no one else, I think that is not the right call. I think if it is Ekitike plus Rodrigo or whomever it may be, a young Fofana from Lyon, whoever it may be, I think that would be better for the team as a whole. But if you're going player for player, I think Isak is the better striker currently.
We have a Newcastle fan, Laminos, thanks for joining and watching us. But from their point of view, Isak considered their best player. I mean, I always have the opinion goal scorers are your most important player first. If you don't score goals, it doesn't really matter what you do because it's a rare event game. It's the average score is I believe 1-1, or 1-0 even. But it's goals are rare in the game, and if you have players that have a talent for putting the ball in the net, they're your most important player. Everything else after that builds from there. So from the Newcastle point of view, if they're quite happy to let Ekitike go and keep Isak, and rather than have the two of them together, that would suggest that even they consider Isak to be the better option, considering how much money they could get for him. Here's my thing. I just want to show a graph there, and I'm gonna put it up because I have very bad eyesight. I'm gonna put it up there, bigly. Isak 25 there. Now, right now, Isak looks like he has the current better statistics, the better underlying numbers. But Ekitike has the potential. I mean, there is a swings and roundabouts to this, Susie, isn't there? We could get goals now, or we could get you know, a good amount of goals now, or we could get a serious amount of goals now, but building to when the day comes that Salah has to leave, and we are at least not stuck with looking for a goal scorer. And that's not even considering what Wirtz is going to bring. We don't know yet what his role is going to be. We know he can score goals, but we also know he can create goals. My question to you is, in terms of what you would like to see as a fan, would you want to storm everything? Have, Isak up front at number 9, Salah out on the right wing scoring his Salah amount of goals, Wirtz terrifying everybody with goals from the attacking midfield position. We'll get to Diaz later, but let's say Diaz goes, Gakpo has the free run or of that left wing just for now, for what we have in our hand. And then get with that confidence, throws in a load of goals as well. McAllister throws in his few from midfield. Maybe Szoboszlai finds his form, finds his feet. Maybe Frimpong or Kerkez decide to be the next goal scorer and fullback in Liverpool history. We go all out. We win, maybe, potentially, fantasy, fingers crossed, league and Champions League double. That sets us up for the next couple of years really nicely, doesn't it? We're going to be the club to be at for everybody, outside of Madrid, of course, because they get whoever they want by hook or by crook, and usually by crook. So what would you rather now? Would you rather have that potential of Ekitike, or would you rather have that, not guaranteed, because there's no guarantees, but the player, the bird in the hand, so to speak, rather than the two in the bush? You where misses.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to play for the moment. And I think, obviously, losing Jota, we've seen life just isn't guaranteed. Your future's not guaranteed. So we've got to play for the moment. He's like, I mean, he's 25. It's not like he's, 29 or 30 years old. So prior to us discovering all this money that John Henry's been stashing away in Bitcoin, I would have gone for tiki-taka, and because it was a risk money-wise, but obviously we money's it's not an issue right now as far as what we can see. So given that, you go for Isak, who's tried and tested in the Premier League, and I would say he's probably the best striker in the world, up there with Haaland right now. He does. My only doubts of Isak, as Brian was saying, is the niggly injuries, and I know, obviously, being a personal trainer and studying kinesiology, them little muscle injuries, like the groin, so hamstrings and thighs, they can disrupt your season, and we saw that with Jota. We've seen that with Konate, and they have a habit of coming back. But saying with that, Isak scored over 20 goals last season. I think he came second only to Salah last season. I mean, I say play for the moment. We have that luxury of money that we saved over the last 3 years by with that net profit, winning the net profit trophy, and just go for the moment, if we can. And I think even next season, at the end of next season, Isak goes down to what last year of his contract, or so his value is going to go down considerably a lot end of next season. So what we're offering now, 120 million, I think Newcastle will probably take between 70 to 100 million next season, just so he doesn't go on a free the season after. So I think Richard Hughes is playing this so cool, and I really think that it's not like Liverpool to make a bid public if we won't give him the encouragement to do so. So to come out and say, right, here's 120 mil, and make it publicly known, we must have got some kind of encouragement from someone for Liverpool to make that public, whichever way it got out. And we very rarely do we do that. Obviously, we did that with Casado, and I think that was just like a last-minute desperate move. But this isn't a last-minute desperate move. It's been calculated, and it probably would have happened if it wasn't for the whole Jota thing. And but yeah, it's we basically forced Newcastle's hand, and it's like, all right, you either sell us Isak or we go for your number one choice, and if you don't, then we'll take your number one choice and you're stuck. And I read somewhere today that there's 25 players that rejected Newcastle this season. That's a record. And so it's, if we do get Tiki Taka, then that's another player who's like, no, don't want to go to Newcastle. So and you got Wema, who's choosing Man United over Newcastle. I mean, that pretty much says it all. So I don't know what Newcastle are going to do. I think their best bet for them is to sell us Isak, buy Tiki Taka, and whatever money is left over, try and strengthen that squad. I think it's in their interest just to take that 30, 40 million price cut from what they value Isak at, and just take it and build a team. Just hold on to Isak, and by all accounts, Isak's been wanting to come to us. He's a player that we looked at even before Nunes. For whatever reason, I think who was the guy that took over Edwards? Julian Brand. So for whatever reason, he chose Nunes over Isak at the time. So he's a player that we've definitely been following, and I think we've shown last season as well the lack of injuries we've had, that our physio department's doing something right this season with the new physios that we have, and again, we walked the league last season. It's only for us to lose it. We're in a position of strength. Everyone's trying to catch up. Everyone's scared of us, and if you add someone like Isak to it as well, it's almost like 99% game over, and we just got to turn up how we used to do in the 80s.
Brian, Coach ST on X, thanks for watching us. Coach ST says, why not both Hugo now, Isak next summer for a lot less? Now, we on the Thursday show, and me specifically, have a long history of criticising not FSG but the transfer committee set up and Michael Edwards, etc. Hughes is he's the trump card in the pack right now. It seems we're actually being strategic in our transfers. It's not, we've always, since FSG came in, we've always had a numbers-based sort of data-focused transfer system, but maybe not the negotiations part. And we seem to be getting players in first before we start letting players go. Do you think that it's actually a plausible plan, that maybe we are getting Ekitike in now, and then when Isak is on his last year, assuming he doesn't sign a new contract, then we can hit them and say, hey, you could have got him for 30 million more last year, but we're taking him now. Do you think this new version of FSG's transfer system is thinking that far ahead?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you have to right there in the long run to look about a season or two ahead. That's kind of one of the things, like I said before, right there, what kind of bit us back in 2019, that we weren't looking ahead of time right there when we didn't make our recruitments after winning the Champions League. And we were able to come through and win the league the following year, but we didn't have those middle ground players to go and step into those roles. And I think that's one of the things that we have to correct right there going forward right there, is that actually have a gap right there between your younger players and your senior players, that you have a middle ground players that can grow into that position. And I mean, I think plausibly right there, yeah, I think that it would make more business to go after Itataki this year and then go after Isak next summer right there. But in the meantime, right there, you still have to have some type of forward that's in place right there, just because of our loss that we had there. So, which opens up right there to have at least one or two of these players that we talk about in the front line are probably going to wind up staying. I mean, I'm kind of on the point right now that I think that Nunez may be here with us another season. I mean, I think that's just for the point of right there, because of being short up front. I think that it's a good possibility that you may have him. I think that Chiesa may be here this year. I mean, I think that both players have a chance with their. You have to go back and look at how many matches we play, right there, that we play, and also by having at least 3 forwards in rotation, you take the pressure off of a young player to go out there to perform and all that. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do. But yeah, that's what I think. I think it's a very plausible idea.
That maybe Nunez has got his hair cut, so he'll hope nobody will recognise who he is, and you won't sell him on the slide.
Hey, the lack of ponytail helped out against Preston North End.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and you know I'm all about the hairstyles affecting the level of play with the frosted tips, etc. And that's long been a contention of mine in real life that players who get their hair cut mid-season always lose their mojo. Kenny, now tactically, gegen pressing and pressing for the ball, the whole point outside of regaining the ball is to put the player on the ball in a dilemma where they can either cough it up or send it long, and you should be, if you're doing it right, prepared for that long ball. And to sweep it up and then start the counter-attack again. It seems like this is the tactical version of gegenpressing. We're putting Newcastle in a bind where they're either going to have to give up on Ekitike and keep Isak for that one more year before he goes for a lower price, or they sell him to us anyway and we get Ekitike as well. It's almost like this is a game within a game, isn't it, in the transfer thing? And for me, as a long-time Liverpool fan, this is really, really new to us.
Yeah, I think someone in the Discord called it Gegen negotiation. Love it. That's a perfect way to describe it. It is nice. Again, I mentioned I've been frustrated with whoever, FSG or whoever was running the transfers the past few years. It seemed like they were too, what do they call it, opportunistic signings. They were too fixated on that versus strengthening the team. And it's important to not overpay or overspend for players. But, when you need position, I mean, clearly I was wrong. We won the league and walked it without any signings. So what do I know? But, it was frustrating to see. It's nice to see us. We're arguably, in my opinion, obviously the biggest club in England. It's nice for us to show our strength and put our, kind of foot on Newcastle's necks per se. Hey, look, Ekitike wants to go to Liverpool more than he wants to go to Newcastle. Give us your player, or we take the one you want. We have the money to do it. You guys need the money. Play ball or lose the player you want for free. And I'm not sure why I think this. I have no reason to do. I do think it's now or never for Isak, in my opinion. Getting him now for 120 million when he's 25. Again, I don't know why I think this. I feel like FSG would be less likely to go in for him and spend big money on him next year, even if it is 90, 100 million when he's 26. Unless it just seems like that may be the tipping point of the age where we have to sign him to a 4 or 5 year contract, and we're getting to him in his 30s, and maybe like that 1 year too late. So I think if Newcastle do want to sell us Isak and get the big money for him, it is now or never. Who's to say Arsenal or United or someone doesn't come in? I don't see him in Newcastle after the next season at the very latest, though. I just think that for us, it's hey, now or never. But you're right. It is great to see us, kind of show our might. Hey, we saved money for a reason. We can spend as much as we want. Play ball with us, or we'll show you who's in charge, kind of thing. It's great to see.
So Z, your headline thing it says for the chess grandmaster for Richard Hughes. Do you think, because there's been articles around about how much we've spent, and on the BBC website, how have Liverpool been able to spend so much money so quickly? But if you look at the sums of money being bandied around for Luis Diaz for a start, we could end up with a very small net spend in the end of it all. Not quite 2 million or something like that, but a reasonable amount if we recoup some money back from players we need to let go. Chiesa, maybe Nunez as well, despite what we just said a few minutes ago. So in that sense, do you think the policy now is to get what we need in and then to see what we can claw back financially from the players that were the manager is maybe not too hot on or is not too upset if they're going to leave, but he can use them if they end up staying?
Well, I think we came to the end of that 3 year period, right? And we didn't spend any money um, over the last 2 seasons. I mean, obviously we constructed our midfield in clubs last season, but in terms of net spend, it was like negative net spend. So there was a lot of money there, and despite what we've spent so far, we've still spent less than what Man City did in January. So, and then we've still got feasible assets to sell. Unlike Man City, like they didn't get anything for KDB. If Bernardo Silva leaves, they're not going to hardly get anything. Ederson leaves, they're not going to get anything. We still got some valuable assets that are surplus requirements at Liverpool that we can still get over 50, 60 million for. Um, and we're just in such a great position. And and with this new Champions League format as well, we made a good ton of money there, despite going out to PSG. But even that little mini league where we came top, we made over 100 million just there. Now, you add to the fact that Diaz will probably, I'd be very surprised if Diaz is here before the transfer window closes. I think if we are obviously, you close the deal on Isaac and Isaac or Ekitike, then Nunes is almost definitely gone, and might take 60, 70 million for him, maybe even 50. So we'll definitely recuperate the money in terms of player sales, but we don't need to, and we can actually make a financial loss this year and still be within our PSR window. So it's a great position to be in. I never thought I'd see it, and it's not like we haven't spent money under FSG. I think when we do buy players and we buy big, we buy quality, and obviously Virgil and Alisson are evident of that. We get it wrong here and there, like with Keita and Nunes, but generally speaking, our transfer dealings have been probably the best in the league. Barring of course Brighton, who they're buying cheap players and making shit ton of money on, out of Chelsea for them. But I mean, it's again, I don't want to keep harping back to the past, but it's just like the 80s when we ended up buying Beardsley, Barnes, and Ray Houghton all in the same transfer window, and it's like, what? It just give us a league title now, and that's how it feels. And again, we're in a position of strength, and the new season is just there for us to lose. Man City have spent, but I don't think they've spent enough in the right areas. They still need quality goalkeeper, midfielders, defense, and if they're relying on Haaland completely to get the goals, then they're still in trouble. So, and Marmoush is going to AFCON as well. He's probably one of the better players, and I think they're the only legit competition for next season. So it's all good. We're just going to get further in the Champions League as well to make next season more profitable as well. And yeah, it's been a while since we've been in this position post season and just buying players like we want. And what's more so is that the players want to come to us. It's not like we're state funded. These players are buying into Liverpool culture. They're buying into Slot's ambition. They're buying into Richard Hughes. And Virch is just, prime example of that. He could have gone to City, despite what City said about pulling out. No, you didn't pull out. He just didn't want to go to you guys. And just like he didn't want to go to Bayern. And that tells you everything you need to know about Liverpool. And again, it's just more attractive to players like now. Like, yeah, if they're thinking about Man City or Liverpool, Arsenal, they're gonna want to come to Liverpool. We've shown that we can win the league without buying players, and we walked it. We have a great manager, and now we've got the top players picking us above any other team in the world, barring Real Madrid.
Just the thing before I move on to Brian is the thing about this for us going back that far, is that we have bought players before for an enormous amount of money, but it's always been almost the traditional model. We've never been this strategic, have we? This is the great thing about it. It's almost the strategic way of doing transfers. Brian, let's move on. Have you talk first about this chappy here? So if we talk about the incomings and the possible outgoings, this is one of the main outgoings. We all expected, I think, Chiesa to be the first one on the plane out. But this chap here seems to be the one that could be the one that goes and brings in some money. 28 years old. He's a very streaky player. When the streaks are hot, he's very, very valuable, but they don't come too regularly. He does bring players into the game when he's on the pitch. He does have a lot of skill. So here's my question, Brian. Number one, is he worth retaining for the amount of money that clubs seem to want to pay for him, or that we're holding out for? Or is that one where you look at his age and you look at that streakiness and you go, you know what, if somebody wants him for 80 million, get it done now. If somebody wants for 60 million even, get it done now, because his value is only going to go down in the next few years for us.
Absolutely. I think honestly, if somebody offered 60 for him, 65, I'd take it in a heartbeat. Honestly, I think the one thing with signing Kirk has right there, it kind of negates having a wide left winger, in my opinion. I mean, which is a DS type of position that he plays in. I think that which goes back to where Gapka or Cody Gapka or somebody like that who can actually go play a little bit more inside right there is going to be probably more valuable to us in the long run. Where DS right there likes to hug the touchline and then come in. I mean, yeah, we did go out there and play him up the middle right there, but I think that largely became pretty unsuccessful. And I think everybody on here ranted about why are we doing this in this experiment right there. So I think in the long run, I think that if there's a more valuable player in Chiesa with being able to maneuver around in different spots than having a DS right there where you have the amount of money that you can make off of him. Chiesa, we're not making 70 million off of Chiesa. We're not making 65 off of Chiesa. I think really honestly, probably at the most right there, and with Chiesa, we're making 25 at the max, probably right there, double what we spent on him for the most part. So if we need to go back and recoup money right there, and we have a person who's going to be in a position that we're probably not going to utilize right there in this with a formation change, which I think we're going to do a formation change, then it's obvious right there that Luis Diaz right there, he wants to leave, and so I think everything matches up. I mean, if the rumors are right, he's already agreed with Bayern Munich with it. I mean, with a contract. So if that's the case right there, sure. I mean, if they can cough up 65, I know they were under. I think they offered like 45 or 50 or something like that. 15 mil is not much to go in there to go into as of a difference. I mean, so yeah, I'm all for going ahead and moving him on.
Let me ask you this, though, Brian, before I go to Kenny. Is we've been convinced, and we've talked about the possibility of a formation change coming up next season. And as much as the Preston North End game was the first of the pre-season, and as much as it was filled with two essentially patched together starting 11s for each half, you would still think that you would see something of what Slot wants and for coming forward to the next season. And I didn't see that. No. So is it possible that we've got that wrong and that he actually is going to stick with what he did last year? Or do you think it's going to be subtle changes and then the players that are coming in are going to show us when Wirtz starts playing the preseason game, then we'll see something happening up front in the change. If Diaz goes, then we'll see Gakpo out there doing the tucked in, left winger with Salah moving in a little bit more on the right side. But right now, with the players from last year, he's still doing what he did last year. What do you think?
I mean, you have to shop window players about if we are honestly out there thinking that Diaz right there is an asset that we can actually make money off. Would you play him? Would you not play him in the position where you need to play him, or play players in positions where you know that they're going that there is their strengths? I mean, in the next match right there we have right there, I wouldn't be surprised seeing Harvey Elliott come there playing in a position right there that shows his strengths because again, we already already know what we're going to see right there as far as these players. So putting them at a strong point that puts them out there and saying, hey, this is what he can offer you is a smart piece of business. I mean, and like you said right there, I think when Verts gets in here, you have to come out there and make a shift of a change right there because because you have to utilize what his strengths are and what we bought him for. We bought him for an attacking midfielder that actually creates. You're not having that right there with this way position goes. Because I mean, we've obviously watched this past year with a 4-3-3 right there, or variants of 4-3-3 that you have Slavosly that makes a run that basically draws players toward him, which opens up your most solid on that side. So I don't think we're going to see that right there. One, I think because again goes back to how are you utilizing Frimpong and Kirkes right there by doing that same thing? You're not coming through. You bought players right there that you're not going to utilize their strengths for, and I think that's what we have to that we're going to see more evolve once we get these other players in.
Kenny, you still is he, do you think, a player that will end up being almost like a Nigel Clough, to go way back in history, but like a player like Nigel Clough, who had all the talent in the world, but just couldn't make it work at Liverpool, like Yari Littman, all the talent in the world, just couldn't make it work at Liverpool. And he goes with our blessing if he does go. I don't think he ever let us down. He's never looked like he didn't care. He just couldn't get like the shots to stay below the crossbar for a start. But he never stopped running for us, and he has been a game changer at times. Do you think that that's the kind of player he ends up being, or is this what we've seen? Is that the level of his talent, and whoever buys him is actually going to overpay for him? Maybe
he's an interesting one because he has a lot of raw ability, almost like Darwin, in that you can see
it's very street soccer ability almost, isn't it?
Yeah, you can see what he can do. He can beat a player. He's quick. He's a great touch. He's aggressive. He presses well. He has everything you want him to do, but it just feels like that last piece just isn't always there. Or Salah doesn't always look great, but he's scoring goals. He's making assists. He may beat a guy by dribbling it off his shins twice. Who cares? Doesn't look great. He scores the goal. And I think Diaz just and like you said, I'm not comparing him to Darwin because Darwin does quit and throws his toys out, throws a fit. But I had no hard feelings with Diaz. He wants to go. He's done well for us. He's worked hard. He's provided what he could. Like you said, it never felt like he wasn't giving it his all. But I do slightly disagree with what Brian said about taking a cut price for him. He wants to go. I think Liverpool are perfectly fine with that. From what I read, he's been allowed to watch videos of Vincent Kompany pitching him the Bayern project and all this stuff about Barcelona. I don't think we'd let him do that if he was not for sale like we say he is. But we're also back to the 40 chess master Richard Hughes. We have no, other than we would like to get money for him, we have no reason to sell him. We don't need the money. We don't need the PSR, cash to come into hand. Pay us what we want, and we're not selling him. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to keep him. And he has a contract. I think it was originally reported he wasn't making any money on his wages, but I think that was incorrect, and it was corrected that he's making a decent wage with us, nothing special. So, if you don't want to pay us what he's worth, we're happy to pay him. It's not like I don't think he's going to be the guy who refuses to play. So pay us what he's worth, in our opinion, or don't pay him at all. I think that maybe we try that. No one wants him for that price. We can always. It's not like Bayern's going to be like, no, we're good now. At least I don't think so. So I think that's a smart move from Richard Hughes, being like, hey, he's not for sale. Here's what we want for him. Because it's not like he's not for sale. There's no price. It's like he's not for sale. It's 80 mil. You know what I mean? That's not the same thing. So I think that if someone wants them bad enough, they'll either pay for him. Saudis are apparently willing to pay for him. If he wants to go there or not, that's a different question. But I think it's a smart move to hold out for more money for him. Worst case scenario, the offers are still on the table, and we can get rid of him if we really need to, or if he really wants to, or pushes that move through. And, worst case scenario, we have arguably our second best attacker last year still at the club. That's not a bad worst case scenario. I think it's smart to hold out for more money and just see if it comes in. If Bayern and Barcelona don't want to do it and he doesn't want to go to Saudi, then take a lower price or keep him. I don't think that's the worst option in the world. And last thing, and I'll stop rambling. Watching the Preston game, I and this is what I've mentioned. I did a couple of the morning shows. I think the fact that no one can guess and know what we're going to look like next year, formation wise, I have no idea. No one seems to have any idea. Everyone has a different opinion. That might not be the worst thing in the world. We can set up 20 different ways with 20 different sets of players, all ready to go. Maybe one day we start with Frimpong and Kirkez and play like a 5-back, unofficially. Next game we do a regular 4-3-3, and then we can do 1,000 other things. I think that's a good problem to have, is not having a set formation. We have players that can play in a lot of different ways, and a lot of different players who are high quality players who can play positions differently from one another. I think that's a good problem to have.
1,000 different ways, and Kenny names too. Only kidding. So see, the last thing on Diaz, before this, maybe not before the season ended, but just around when the season ended, the kind of statements coming out of the Diaz camp was that he was happy at Liverpool and he didn't want to go. Then all the transfer flurry started, and now he seems to be open to a move. Do you think it's a case that he's essentially seen the writing on the wall, and that Slot's going to go in a new direction, and he's going to struggle to get playing time, especially if we get Rodrigo, and then we have maybe Chiesa redeems himself somehow in whatever nonsense is going on between him and Arne Slot. We'd have Wirtz, we'd have Salah, maybe Ekitike, maybe Dreamland, him and Isak on the same team. Do you think for Diaz, he'd be looking at that and going, you know what, I could go and win a free trophy almost at Bayern Munich. That seems to be the way to go, and instead of having to fight for a starting place at 28 years old.
No, I just think that the idiot went and got married. That's what it was, and his wife's pulling the strings. It's
Don't we all know that feeling?
Yes. No, I mean, we've done right by him. He's done right by us. We were there for him when his parents got kidnapped, and as Kenny alluded to, like whenever Diaz plays, you're going to get 100%. Whether if Paul comes off or not, he's always given 100%. He's never, throwing his toys at the pram or anything else like that. If he wants to leave, that's fine. But we're in control of this, and okay, you can leave, but you leave on our terms. And if he doesn't leave, I don't think, being World Cup season, that he's going to play 50% of what he can do, because I don't think it's in him to do that. And secondly, we're in such a great position where all our players are going to want to give 100% this season to be at USA or Mexico, Canada next year for the World Cup. And with Diaz on our team, we're not any worse for it. I know obviously you've seen Slot likes him, and you can see that Slot likes the type of players that he can play in various positions, and Diaz has shown that. He's not the best goal scorer in the world, but I mean that's not what we bought him for. He causes a lot of chaos on the touchline, on the wings, and it's very few players or very few defenders that can handle him. I think Diaz is just his own worst enemy on that pitch, because he just runs into cul-de-sacs and he doesn't look up and so forth. But he's a terrifying player on that wing. So even if he is here next season, which I doubt, it's good for us. And if we don't have him, it means we've got a better replacement. So we're in a win-win situation. And by all accounts, if we do sell him, then we've got, we've almost probably double or triple the money that we paid for him originally. And, he's helped us win the league. So now we're in a good position with him. We're in our desperation to sell him. And if anything, he's desperate for the move, which is fine. You've been a good servant for us. We're just gonna make the money. We just need to make our money on you. And we know Bayern Munich have that money because they're willing to spend 100 million on Wirtz, and now they're desperate for a winger because of Musiala. So it just feels like everything's aligned for once in our favor. And yeah, it's we're in a position of strength in this one as well.
Everything is coming up Millhouse, as they say. Let's go on to the next, and I'll start with Kenny with this. Now, if one player is hinting that he is, he is prepared to leave, and there's no animosity around it, this player here who's showing us his arse right now, isn't telling us either way. There's a contract, I think, in front of him, or at least a negotiation for a new contract in front of him that hasn't been signed. But he also hasn't come out and said, look, it's not working for me, I'd like to leave. It seems like that's the next strategic thing we need to see, is whether we can get Konate to commit to Liverpool or admit that he's not going to sign a new contract and allow us the chance to actually go and get replacement. My question to you, Kenny, is what do you think of the situation? And then do you think we should just, the transfer team, given how good they seem to be doing things right now, should just forge ahead as if he's not going to be a Liverpool player very, very soon?
I think the writing is on the wall with him. He's not going to be here at the end of the season, at the latest. He may stay for the year. By all reports, he's running down his contract similar to what Trent did to get that move to Madrid, who seemingly can talk to whatever players under contract they want to agree with these deals, despite it not being allowed. I think if we can get money for him this summer, we should go ahead and do it. Diaz wants to leave, knowing we can get money for him, knowing that he has options and people willing to pay for him. Konate wants to run down his deal. I think that's different. I don't think he went about it the right way. He could come out and say, hey, look, I want to go to Madrid. Cool. They can pay us, not what he's worth, obviously, because he has a year left on his deal. But, they can pay us what's a reasonable fee and take him now. And we can start to work on finding the new replacement or the newest person that can I don't know, take his place, at least hopefully take his place. Margay comes to mind. He seems like the perfect solution to that problem. Put Gahey in, seems like, I think he's 24, 25, slots right in, captain of Crystal Palace, arguably England's best defender. Put him in, pay the money, get him from Palace, and move on. I think Liverpool know what he's going to do. I'm not sure there's a uncertainty to them. Obviously, they've announced us. He hasn't announced it, etc. I don't think that they are unaware. So I think if there's money on the table, I think Madrid was rumored to say they're willing to pay up to 25 mil on him now. I think we go ahead and sell him. That's clearly not what he's worth. But turning it down and letting him go for free next year, is he worth a 25 million plus his salary loan fee per se for the year? I don't think so. Again, assuming that we get his replacement in now. I don't think we can rely on Gomez, despite my love for him. Great servant to the club. He just can't stay fit, or not reliably fit. But he was out all season last season, which means he'll probably be fit all year this year. That seems to be his trend. But again, it's hard to rely on that. So I think if we can get someone in, Madrid are willing to pay a reasonable-ish price now. Let's just cut the cord, get it over and done with, get some money in for him, and start to move on. Obviously, not an ideal situation. You'd hope he'd want to sign and stay with us, which I'd love for him to do. I just don't. That seems the least likely scenario now by a long margin.
Brian, I saw you shake your head there with the Gomez thing, and I think you're right. He's incredibly physically unreliable. But my question to you is there anybody out there that we could bring in to be the future? And I'm saying this entirely blindly because I haven't followed any, you know, you know, highly rated players in European football. I haven't had time to do that, so I really don't know who's out there. Except for the Preston North End number 6 who scored against us. That was a bullet header. I'd love to see some of that back in the Liverpool team. But is there anybody out there, do you think, that could be the next Virgil and for the next 2 years or so, play with Virgil, learn the ropes, get into the slot system, and then we end up looking to replace Virgil, and we have a 2-year buffer to do so?
Gooey. I mean, that's obviously a choice right there that's out there right now. And I also think that's who we need to go there and get finalized with Crystal Palace. I mean, that move needs to go there and happen before we even think about Kanate. If Kanate goes there, if we don't get that, I mean, Hato right there definitely is a young player right there that's has a lot of ups. I mean, you also still have a couple players out there in Portugal, right there, that have some decent things that you could do with. But I think that if we can't get anybody in, then we're basically going to be stuck with Kanate and leaving Kanate on a free. I mean, and that's kind of where we're at the moment right now. I mean, we have to get business done in the back. And I understand right there our priorities right now are kind of looking at a number 9 right there, but we said this back in the show right there, like last year, that we need a new left back, we need a new right back, we needed a center back, and we need a holding midfielder, and we need a number 9.
I'm telling you, Brian, they're all watching this show every single Thursday and getting their hints from here.
These are all things that you Sir Z, Kazi, all of us said the whole time right there. These are numbers that we had to have, especially with moving Kwanzaa on. I mean, that makes a hole right there. Lucas Stevenson right there shows a lot of and Nalo both show a lot of promise right there. But it goes back to what I said right there. You have to have a player in between right there for those kids to go there to grow into the position. And right now, those kids aren't ready for there. So you need probably at least another 2 center backs right there if Kanate leaves. If Kanate doesn't leave right there, then I think you have Gomez who can play across the entire line, which is a good backup right there. I mean, I think probably your only problem you have with Gomez, again, it goes back to health and is he able to last the entire season? I mean, because we remember when Gomez came there and played on that played back a couple of seasons ago, right there was brilliant. I mean, he was fine sitting back in that same on that right center back position, but I think that we have to go after Gooey. We have to go there and make sure that deal gets done with Crystal Palace.
Not to interrupt, guys, but I recently read that Stevenson actually plays holding midfielder, not
he can play everywhere.
He played on loan last year. He was midfielder, which is I found interesting. He looked good though. Don't get me wrong.
So at Dundee right there, he did go there and play at holding midfielder, but he's actually naturally a center back right there. So he's very versatile player right there. Kind of like I think you can probably go there and put him in the same ballpark as a Gomez right there, except that he's not as great out on the wide side. But if you look at his tapes back from SPL, I mean he was definitely their player of the season at Dundee.
Just before I move to Suzy, you know what my love for the names for the people who like this. So, I'm Jeanette Lubrecht on Facebook. Thanks for the like. It's good to see you. Follow our madness. Suzy, here's what I want to ask you. You mentioned about Ernie Slot not looking for project players, and young defenders are by definition project players. It's one of the few positions where you really need maturity going in if you want a successful defender. There's occasional players that come through that are just phenoms, as they say in professional wrestling. But we're not going. Ernie Slott's not going to get a project player for central defence to replace Kanate, is he? It's going to be somebody who knows what they're doing. The number 6 from Preston North End who scored against us, so he looked like a solid piece. If we're right about other things on Thursday, I'm going to keep pushing that until they sign him. But now we're going to get somebody who's tried and tested, aren't we? If we're going to plan for a life without Kanate.
Yeah, I think we saw Kanate as well. I see a world where we let him go for free, because I think having him in the team, in terms of weighing up the costs, how much it's going to cost to replace him, and then by having him in the team where we can potentially win both Champions League and the Premier League, and all right, we might not get 20, 30 million, which Madrid are offering, and I don't think he's going to want to go. I don't think he wants to go anywhere else but Madrid, maybe PSG. We just have to weigh up financially what was better, and I think that's what we did with Trent. I think Liverpool knew Trent was going to leave. Everyone knew Trent was going to leave, but was he better in the team to have him in the team than sell him in January, where we risk losing the league? And I think we're in the same position with Konate as well. And it's not Konate's fault. He wasn't given a contract, and I think by all accounts, I don't think anyone, definitely in Klopp's last season, would have given Konate an extension either, because he was piss poor that season. To the point where we started Kwanzaa in the first game, and obviously Konate never looked back, and he had the odd injury here and there, but I think the injury was more forced upon because of Hendrick than like a muscle injury. In regards to replacements, if we can get two good replacements, and as the boys mentioned, like Gehi for sure, and I thought that was actually going to be our announcement this week. That Gehi's done, and Hato again. Hato's a more of a project player, but I think with Gehi that would be great. And any defender coming in has got the luxury of having Virgil next to them, who just makes everyone around him better. So who better to learn from than having Gehi, who's tried and tested, England's best defender, and then having someone like Hatter, who's a Netherlands player, youngster who looks up to Virgil, and having him there coming in to replace Gehi, maybe go on to replace Virgil in a long term. I think that's the ultimate project there. So you've got a mixture of both. And then, you've got other defenders out there like Hincapi or Inacio who are both, kind of world-class or borderline world-class defenders that we could go for. And I think Inacio's got a release clause of 50 million. But then it makes you wonder why no one's triggered it. So you kind of question that too. But I think that Konate is not a bigger deal as what we think it is. I think either way we're better with him in a team than without. But if we can get two solid replacements, because we definitely need to replace Kwanzaa, and a potential replacement for Konate. So if we get someone like Gehi, start phasing Konate out. If you're not going to sign with us, we're going to phase you out. So, or we get good money for you, and that's up to Madrid. So I don't think. Again, we're not in a position that we're all scared of. Like last season with Salah, Virgil, and Trent, we potentially could have lost all three for free. Konate is not that big of a deal. I think we're making it bigger than what it is. We know he has to give 100% this season because of the World Cup. He's not going to risk his World Cup position by not giving 100% to us. So again, we're in a strong position, and it's not, and it's not fault of Konate's. It's Liverpool's fault. But at this same time, I don't think anyone was giving him an extension season before last. So this is one of the things.
Friday seems to be the day as well, so maybe we'll all wake up to a nice Gehi surprise tomorrow morning. Brian and Kenny, before we move on to the last item of the night, we seem to do a lot of under FSG of letting players run out their contracts. Are we the only club who does that? I don't know anybody who does that. It's almost like a deliberate thing. Like literally, like, okay, we don't need to get money for you. We'd love to get money for you, but I always thought it was a Klopp thing. Just Klopp just being, you've served your time, you've given us some good times. We're not going to mess around with stuff. And if somebody puts in a bid, we'll take some money. But it seems to not be a Klopp thing. So are we the only club that does that and lets players regularly run out their contracts?
I mean, I'm honestly, I think we are probably one of the only clubs that really do that right there. But in a way, right there, say for instance, like with Milner, I mean, when that happened right there, it's kind of like hey, guess what? Thank you for everything you've done for us. We're not going to go and do it. Same thing with Bobby Firmino right there. Same exact situation right there. Hey, thanks for everything you've done for us right there. We appreciate you. If you want to go, we want to utilize you for what we need to utilize you for. We're not going to get the same amount of money that you would expect right there to go there for a transfer for these players and just let them run their deals down right there. I mean, I think with Trent, we tried and it wasn't going to happen. I think that is what happened with that. And I'm with like Sorziza right there. I'm okay with Konate running it down because again, goes season before last. I think I pulled what little bit of hair I had left in my head right there out watching Konate right there. And we had some pretty decent streaks right there with him, but we lost him right there. Season before last, he could only do like a string of 4 games and then he was out. So these are just things, observations that make right there. If he goes, he's more valuable right now in the squad than giving him to somebody else and getting almost nothing for him, in my opinion.
To be fair, though, we were paying James Milner in right B in it, so it wasn't too much of a drag to let him go for free. Kenny, what do you think? Is this outside of that loyalty thing? Do you think this is a strategic thing, or do you think it's more that they may look at it and go, "We're better off putting our energies elsewhere than trying to convince this player to sign or trying to get this player off the books for a lot of money"?
I think with players like Milner, Bobby, he mentioned it makes sense. They're probably worth, they're in their, especially Milner is 104 years old.
103, get it right.
Sorry. Is he, are we going to get a huge fee for him? No, he's worth more to have in the team than it is to sell him. And that's where I have the issue with the Konate deal. And I don't think this was necessarily a purposely, like, I think that for Milner and Bobby, it was purposely done. Let them run out their deal, let them go. I think with Konate and to an extent Trent, Salah, Van Dijk, it was a dropping of the ball almost. Like, I don't think it was meant to get to this point. The Konate one, it frustrates me. I think that is just poor planning from whoever was doing that the years past to get to this point where he is, I guess, in power against the club. He has all the power. I think it's worth it. Okay, so I think we would be better to have Konate at the club. But if we're able to get money for him, I think we should do it, being that he's going to go regardless. But if the people who, again, I have argued with in my own head 1,000 times, Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, they do clearly know more than I do. If they think that keeping Konate is the best way for us to move forward and let him go on the free, that's fine. But I would still like to see the 2 center backs we need come in now because we're going to need them regardless. And it would be better to get them in and settled than to try to do it and hope they work once Konate goes anyway. So if they think that we want to get Gehi, Hato, whoever, the Portuguese players back, last thing I promise. I think the reason people aren't necessarily going in for them is they only play 5 at the back style defenses. I think that might be some of the hesitation around Inacio and I can't remember who the other one y'all said, but I think it's the same thing. So, if we want to keep Konate, that's our best way to win next year, and we're willing to eat that 25 mil or whatever Madrid's able to thing it, and we get the players in that we want to replace him, Gehi, Hato, whoever. Hands up, I'll trust the process that they've proven me wrong before. But if we drag our feet and let Konate go to the end of the year without replacing him, and then we're, stuck with a young center back, whoever it may be, Gomez, who can't stay fit, Virgil, who's 1 year older, and no other center back options. We really need one. That puts a lot more pressure on the club and the player coming in to immediately settle in, immediately become one of the best center backs in the world that we need him to be. That's my take on it.
Tony says Konate has had his head turned. We know, Tony. Look, we showed a picture of it. There's the head being turned. We're entirely on the ball here. So let's end on this. we talk enough about the men's game, but the women's game had a monumental thing happen this week. Olivia Smith, Canadian and 20 years old, first £1 million player, pounds, right? It wasn't pounds. Um, you know, here's the thing I said before we went on there, my little controversial take in it. I did 20 years of coaching and involved coaching in the women's game. And I'm a huge supporter of the women's game, but my opinion had always been that at the professional level, culturally, the women's game has always been 50 years behind. So, because it started a lot later as an organised professional game than the men's game did. So they're always kind of playing catch up. I always thought Abby Wambach would be the first $1 million player because she's just a phenomenal player. I think still the best number 9 in the women's game ever. But it wasn't her. And it's a 20-year-old from Canada. My question to you boys is whether you follow the women's game closely or not. Is this a watershed moment for women's professional football that they're now into those figures? Because she's essentially the Trevor Francis of the women's game in her generation, or as Brian Clough would say, £999,999 and 99 pence, new pence at that. Is this the watershed moment where the sums of money start to get higher, which requires more investment in the women's game? Because now if you're going to be paying £1 million for players and a bit more, you're going to want a return on that in terms of viewership and spectator attendance. So your quality is going to have to be better. Not that it's terrible by any stretch. It's and I remember 10, 20, 25 years ago, actually right back to the 90s, watching the Women's FA Cup final when Arsenal and the Doncaster Bells always seemed to be fighting for the trophies. The women's game has come a hell of a long way. Is this a sign, Brian Suzy and Kenny, start with Suzy, is this a sign that the women's game is making some sort of a breakthrough in let's call it the mainstream arena? And it's already done that really in terms of supporters, but in terms of finances, this is a big moment, I think.
Truthfully, I have no idea. I don't watch ladies or women's football, and I haven't had any interest in watching it. So no, I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
But even in terms of
the only thing
the
I can say,
acceptance of the women's game,
in terms of for a player to go for that amount, and obviously, you guys are probably more versed in this than I am. So it's an eye opener for me as someone who doesn't watch women's football that a player can go for that amount, being on in the football demographic that typically hasn't been is nowhere near as advanced as the men's football. Definitely in Europe. I mean, I know in America, obviously, women's football is a lot more popular than men's, for sure. For her to be world, to break the world record, it's definitely headline making. And obviously, for someone like me, it's actually, like I say, it's an eye opener. It's like, okay, wow, so this game is actually, for someone to ask them to spend that much money, there must be a lot of interest in women's football for them to be, buy someone as competitively at the prizes they have. And I hope, the player could, get some of that and she gets paid well. Personally speaking, I don't think women's football will ever be as popular as men's. But if you're spending that kind of money on a player, then obviously there's a big attraction to it, and the audience base is growing a lot faster than what I originally thought it was.
Brian, I know you've taken an interest in Liverpool women's team because you're always you're a very good read in terms of like looking at the youth teams and the academy and stuff like that. But Suzy makes a point there. I don't think the cultural depth of the men's game is it's rooted in the soccer playing cultures, and so it'll always be the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is. But in terms of the professional culture of it, it's really unfair to try and compare it to the men's game, isn't it? It's not. It doesn't need to be as popular as the men's game. It needs to be the best it can be for the people who are invested in it and watching it. And this is a good sign that it's at least in a healthy shape if clubs are willing to risk that amount of money. They're definitely not thinking that the leagues are going to fold within the next 2 years, are they?
No, I mean I think that WSL right there is definitely here to stay. I think that I think that there's enough investment right there that's come up right there. I mean during its early days right there, it had basically a somewhat following. I know even with our club right there, they didn't even play it. They kind of played off from us. We associated ourselves with them, but they weren't really the Liverpool women's side right there. So, but now we kind of merged everything together right there and moved on. I really think this move right there goes right there for Arsenal, for the main right there, because they need to break Chelsea's lock on this league. 6 seasons right now that Chelsea have won the WSL. And so for them, and the last one to win it before them was Arsenal. So they have to go there, go back right there to make a big investment to go there, break their hands off this. So, I mean, teams do this right there. If you have the ability right there to do it, and you see what's happening right now, you have to go in there and break the threshold right there to compete again. And so this is about competing. I'm very pro women's league and women's football. I think that I think it's come leaps and bounds right there. I think back from the days of the 99ers in the United States right there, when we saw that resurgence happen right there, and it was like it's now gone worldwide, where at one point right there it was a US only kind of thing, that our investment, the rest of the world was invested in football throughout the entire the men's football game. And I think now that the women's football game has increased popularity, I mean is it going to reach the men's level? Not probably, it probably never will, because it's a very segmented audience to watch it. But I think it's encouraging right there to see young girls come there to see women compete at the same level and become $1 million player, or become these things right there. So it's encouraging right there to see this. And I'm like you right there. I thought Abby Wambach easily should have been the first $1 million player, because she was absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Now the thing about it is, Kenny, Olivia Smith is 20 years old. Even if you're not a fan of the women's game, or if you're some sort of troglodyte who doesn't think it should exist, £1 million valuation on somebody who's just out of their teens. If it was a male player, you'd have the same idea as well. It's a lot of pressure, isn't it, on a young player? And it's even more pressure, do you think, when it's the women's game, because being the first million, Trevor Francis used to talk about the pressure he had, and how great Brian Clough was at easing that pressure on him, and then sometimes not easing the pressure on by telling me paid £1 million for him, so he should be scoring more goals. But for somebody that young, that tells us two things, doesn't it? It tells us, number one, she must be very, very talented, and number two, that the WSL clubs, and by extension their attachment to the men's teams and the men's versions of the clubs, they are serious about the women's game. It's no longer, just give them the jerseys and put them in the park, and we'd send them some cones and some footballs for training with. They're really investing in this, aren't they?
Yeah, I think women's sports as a whole is having a pretty big boom right now. I know like the WNBA, which was always like a running joke almost, is huge. My wife watches it all the time. She, played basketball growing up, and with it now being like a thing, I think it kind of like builds on itself, where women get interested in the sport. That brings more viewership, more money into it. That makes a better product, better players, more money, and then it brings more people into it. So I think we're in like a building phase. I think this is like testament to that, where there, for years it was kind of like funded by the men's teams almost as like a chore, like, oh, we have to pay X amount towards the women's teams. I'm not saying that's the right way to feel, but that was what especially like, I know I'm a huge women's sports fan, similar to Cersei, but like the NBA would always say like, oh, well, the WNBA salaries are funded by the NBA teams. I think now it's becoming where they're earning their own viewership and sponsorships, and they're self-sufficient and profitable. And that allows these big fees, obviously comparatively speaking, small, but for a women's game, the largest fee in history to be possible is that we have the interest and the game is growing. I think that's a good thing. And I apologize to her, my daughter, who's 3 months old, so it'll be a couple of years. Will soon be the first 10 million player. So I'll her start her training as soon as she can walk. But yeah, 20 years old is young. I was an idiot at 20 years old. I'm older now and I'm still an idiot. I can't imagine having the pressure of being the most expensive footballer in the world on my shoulders, especially at 20 years old. But something tells me that they wouldn't spend that money if they didn't think she could handle the responsibility. And I know in our Discord, people were not thrilled that we sold her. So there's something about her. I won't lie and pretend like I've watched her play. I haven't. But if you're ever mad about losing a player, it's not because they're not good. So I think it's great. By all means, grow the game, whatever it takes to do so.
I'm as somebody who's got to coach with some ex-women professionals. There was a time when their salaries were essentially free boarding and a bus pass. So it's come a long, long way, and more power to it. So with that said, that is time for us to wrap up and go to beddy, boys, except for Sir Z, who's still in Tuesday, and he's just about to have his breakfast. But we will be back next week. I think there's more on a coffee tomorrow, and we're getting back into the swing of things with the pre-season about to start heating up, so keep your eye out on the things that we will have for that. And the best way to do that is to follow us on YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram and on X and on Blue Sky and Mastodon and Telepathy and all of those things that we have. Kenny, Suzy, and Brian, great to see you as always. And big up to Tony in the studio, who's been a great contributor to the comments tonight. All of the comments were positive, but we don't care because we're all handsome and bald, except for Kenny, who's only pretending. So we will see everybody next week. Have a good one. Peace out, and we will see you soon.
Yes.